So, good afternoon. My name is Baldwin, and I'm so pleased to be here, and good to see some of our members in the crowd too. It's great to be here. I was asked to come and talk a little bit about the village model and also what's going on in the national movement and kind of where connections can be made with some of the activities going on here in DC and what you're contemplating within your community. I want to start, though, by framing a little bit of what Virginia talked about, and the slide that identified the different services that were surveyed for the community. The communities were surveyed on public transportation, safety, housing, health and wellness, those kinds of aspects. And if you really think about how your local governments are set up, they're unfortunately set up in silos. And yet our lives are not lived in silos. And so what we tend to go towards is really 4 tenets of aging in a community. And really these are not necessarily specific to aging. This can be any age. That you need to have access to safe and affordable and accessible housing. And affordability can be whatever is affordable to you. And that's obviously varying levels of affordability. Needing to have community engagement, fostering some social supports, building upon the social glue and the social capital that's in your community, and just having, ability to talk to your neighbors and to be out and about and not isolated, and then that's a really important component, as well as health and well-being, and not necessarily just access to health services or in-home supports, but also, access to wellness and prevention activities, walking, exercise, a lot of the things that Virginia, you identified in your survey of, are there walking paths, are there places for recreation, places that people can get access to, facilitating that and promoting health. But also independence and mobility, transportation is probably the biggest issue that we're finding in a lot of our communities, but also just mobility of being able to have access and independence and dignity in how you access services and what works for you and your preferences. And I think that's a really critical component in why the village model is so prevalent and the groundswell is really happening across the country, is that it's really about that individual choice. It's really about taking a look at individuals and what their preferences are and honing that membership or honing those services to what your needs are as a member, which I think is really great. I'll take the next slide, please. Thanks. So the village model, I think, is really exciting because it provides a new way to address long-term services and supports, and addresses a new way of looking at communities and community intervention and intention towards making changes, to allow people to be able to stay where they are, to allow people to have the options of making their own choice. If their choice is to stay in their home, they should be able to do that. If their choice is to go to an assisted living facility, they should be able to do that. We're not saying that no one should go to any of these others, but again, it's really about creating a wide array of services across the spectrum that allows you to, as an individual, to enter into that system wherever works for you, and to ensure that that system is flexible for the things that you need. And it can be episodic, and it can be, you had a hip replacement, you just need a little rehab, but you want to go home. Or it can be a chronic issue that you're getting to a point where it can no longer be. And again, it's really about looking at that system. I think what's really interesting is that I read an article in the New York Times on the census, starting to get the new census numbers out into the world. And it was an article that was posted a couple of weeks ago talking about this new population of the near poor. We have a large contingent of population that is just above poverty line, just above, just making do. And while their set incomes as looked at by any local government or census statistician saying, well, it's your income's here. Maybe it's $50,000 a year, give or take. But when you take out child care if you're a young family, if you take out health care costs, you take out transportation costs, now you're down to a lower disposable income that people can actually use to live their daily lives. And I think what's interesting is that the village model and the village movement really stems from that there are individuals who started the village model in Beacon Hill Village in Boston in 2001, basically saying we make too much to access traditional aging network services. And we don't want to be a burden, and those services should go to somebody who has not as much means as maybe I do. But at the same time, there isn't a place where I can buy them. We call them the tweeners. I think our term is better than the near poor, because it seems a little bit better. But that they're stuck in between. They make $10 more than what the eligibility criteria is to get that service, but they don't have enough to be able to buy market rate services. And so you have this group of individuals that's growing, and it's increasing that 22% of the near poor population is over the age of 65 right now in our country. And so trying to figure out how do you look at that issue, how do you maximize those services and resources within their community, but also how do you create new? And I think that's where villages are trying to figure out how do you create and fill in the gaps where services are not being able to satisfy that. So let me do a quick primer on the village model. How many of you, I know we have some of our members here, how many of you have never heard of the village model? Oh, okay. How many of you do you have a basic understanding, or do you want to deep dive into the village model? Do you have a good concept? Okay. So I'll do a high level, but if you need to talk, we can do a lot more deeper primer. Villages are nonprofit, grassroots, membership-based organizations located in communities, started by started by older adults, sometimes younger adults in their own communities, as a way to address the issues and fill the gaps in services and access to services. That's probably the best kind of global overview. Villages are unique to their own communities. As the saying goes, if you've seen one village, you've seen one village. Because it's really about taking the guiding principles of the village model and harnessing that and making that work for your community. Which is, I think, what's really great, that this is not an in-the-box model. This is, has some guiding principles, and then you take those and communities can then say, well, this is what we really need, or this is what the intervention that we really have to have, or we're really missing this service. Because in DC, you've got Metro, which is not fantastic sometimes all the time, but it's better than, the suburban community that's car-centric that has no access to public transportation at all. And so we're a little benefited here with that. Characteristics of villages that are similar: they're self-governing, they're self-supporting, they're grassroots, they consolidate services for members, they are that one-call place. If you have to make 5 different calls, you can make one call to your village, and they will kind of get you to the resources or the information or the volunteer. I like to think of, an older woman who maybe lives alone. She may be a widow, she's in a house, she needs to have the gutters replaced. Her doctor says she also needs to walk because her diabetes is getting out of control. She really needs a ride to her friend's house for the holiday party because she can't carry all the stuff that she needs to take. And these are not things that generally you can call to your local government, unfortunately, to say, can you find me a walking buddy? Can you take me to this place at 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoon because I need to take these things here? And oh, by the way, I need to get some health prevention, wellness, and that might be the place that you get that. And again, that village, because villages, by their very principle, do not replace any existing services within the community, but rather create access to those through information and also through partnerships with the village, you now are able to have a wider array of services available. They create innovative and strategic partnerships that, again, leverage existing services, leverage existing assets and resources. They are person-centered and consumer-driven because most boards of villages are made up 50% or more percent, so mostly 100% of their members. Your membership is driving the vote and the governance and making the decisions, which is really great. And it also promotes civic engagement and volunteerism. I would venture to say that about 80% of the members of villages also will volunteer back to their village. And so you have that opportunity. I'll take that, thanks. Again, they are built to address the community needs. Many of the villages start out by doing a needs assessment and finding out where there are gaps in their services, or where are there gaps, and where they could possibly add value and kind of be the glue that puts those things together. As I said, there are different levels of implementation, and so I want to click through a couple different types of different models that we're seeing that are being utilized, which also, provides a really good flavor of the fact that village model, again, is can be moved and stretched and whatnot. Again, it's developed by it's really impacted by who initiates plannings, the relationships in the community, how do you access and look at your resources, the research that's undertaken. So, by doing a needs assessment, you understand what kind of needs are, but at the same time, you're also asking that individual what they have to offer as an asset. What can they give? What do they want to offer back to the community, which is really exciting. And the knowledge of existing community resources. So, quick overview of the implementation strategies being undertaken. Most villages, on average, will probably take the route of creating a newly created nonprofit organization. Beacon Hill Village, DuPont did the same thing. I think many of the villages here in DC are following that implementation strategy where they're starting a new nonprofit, getting their 501c3, setting up a governance structure, all of those things that are not unlike setting up any other traditional nonprofit organization, other that there are some nuances to the village process and the model that you want to make sure that you identify through that process. There are some villages that are being started by providers. And so these are providers who are saying, and most of them are social service agencies that have been around in their community serving a very low-income population, but are seeing that near poor, that group right above, and want to figure out a way to serve them. And so this was a way that they could harness, and yet they are grassroots. And so let's just, I want to make sure that they are still adhering to the principles. They're not being driven by these providers, but rather the social service agencies are saying, we're going to want to provide space. How can we help our members work towards creating that? But at the same time, they're providing the back office admin support. They're providing the fiscal agent. So it takes a little while to get a 501c3. So if you can get with a provider that's willing to not be so ingrained in the governance, but is willing to allow you to use their 501c3 and be your fiscal agent. You want to find one that's a little more mission-driven and closely aligned with what you want to do within your community. But that is certainly an implementation strategy that's happening. I'll take the next slide. Hub and spoke models are models that are really starting to grow in large, densely populated communities. I think San Francisco, Santa Monica, LA are probably where we're finding the most prevalent. And these are small villages located in neighborhood enclaves so that the cultural and ethnic diversity of those neighborhoods remains sacred, rather, but that they are all connected to one main organization, the hub. And they all share the governance of the hub, but it also allows them to, on a cooperative basis, do some cost sharing. So they buy office supplies together, they buy marketing materials, they go after grants as a group. And so again, it gets to, your volunteers can still be at that local, that neighborhood level, but at the same, but you're a part of a larger group, which actually creates some sustainability and some structure that allows more oomph behind the organization. That's the best technical term I could come up with, oomph behind your organization. There are some healthcare system-based organizations that we're finding that are starting to work through. Crozier Keystone is a healthcare system up in Pennsylvania. They decided to create a village-like organization, and it's a way to add value to their discharge planning process, so it adds the wraparound as well as creates a long-term relationship with that individual who's come to them for healthcare reasons and still can remain at home, but the Crozier Keystone team as an interdisciplinary team can still continue to provide and fill the gaps. They also use volunteers. So they're, again, this is an example of taking the village principles and applying it to what their community needed. We do have a number of virtual villages that are 100% online. It's similar to an Angie's List, but a little bit better because now you also have discussion groups and you have folks connecting online. I'll take the next slide. Time-based reciprocity model where you time sharing. I don't know many of you are familiar with the time bank model. Awesome. For those of you who are not, the time bank model was started by Edgar Cohn as a way to volunteer and create a barter system, but that had added value. So if I volunteer with Courtney and give my time, because I'm a really good baker, I could bake anything you want, but I can't fix my own car. But maybe you know somebody who does in the neighborhood that might be able to help me. I earn $1 hour of time bank time for my volunteering, and I get to use that to somebody else who then also earns it. And so it's a way of volunteering, but with added value. Some villages are actually trying to have started with a time bank, and now we're expanding into the village model and putting those two together. It's something new. Tierra Santa in San Diego is the only one that I know of that's been successful at it. Village Neighbor to Neighbor, which is in a really low-income neighborhood in Detroit that I've been working with, is also trying to do this. Now, what's interesting about Village Neighbor to Neighbor is that while they have village in their name, they are doing an all-ages community organization, and they really are trying to use the time bank as a way to add value for their younger population, to get involved and help the older population and have that transference of assets and knowledge. And so maybe the younger population has a really great entrepreneurial spirit and can create and provide services, and at the same time they get to learn and be mentored by the older population. And they're looking at this village model more as a community building and a way to create social glue and bring that together, less about specifically on aging, even though they do have a large aging population. Villages are also looking at how to maximize existing housing services, and so there are Section 202, which is a senior housing, this is subsidized senior housing that has service coordinators. The service coordinators, unfortunately, have been underpaid for years. And so how can, so some of these groups are looking at how can they add village overlay to that to supplant and add value to the existing service coordination. There's also Santa Barbara Village that's working with the local public housing authority to bring the village membership to that community as a whole, to then also serve the members there. So it's really kind of great that we're seeing a lot of different implementation strategies, and if anything that you take away from today is that the village model is great, and you can implement it in any way that you need to in your community. So I want to make sure that you understand that. So we did some demographic surveys of the villages. As we said before, there are 65 open villages across the country. I think 66 as of tomorrow, because we have one new member launching, which is exciting. About 120 communities across the country that have been are in some stage of development. We also have members in other countries. We have 3 members in Canada, a number in Australia, Japan, Netherlands, and Switzerland. And I'm thinking if I can find a grant to go on a world tour, I think they need a little hands-on work, trying to figure out how to convince a funder to send me to Australia for 3 years to help them. But I have dreams too. But what's really great is that, if you look at the demographic trends of the villages, is that, 51% of the memberships are individual memberships, while 43% are household memberships, and that's again a way of, the different membership levels that many villages have. The average individual dues, they range anywhere from $50 a year to $1,500 a year, and again, this is based on the market. On average, what we're finding is that an individual due is $430 a year, and that gets you access to your village, access to information referral, having that one-stop, but also social activities, and knowing that you have a friend that you can always call and say, I really need information on X, or I'm really struggling with Y, can you help me? Or, on the flip side, I really want to volunteer, I want to be social, are there any opportunities? So it's not just about I have a need, but also I have something to give. What we're finding, though, also is that 13% of our VTV network members are providing a discounted membership. They call them Membership Plus programs, which may charge $100 a year for the same level of service. They're not treated any different. No one knows, other than the administrative staff, that person paid $100 versus the other person that paid, but that we're also finding that 1 in 8 members in a village are considered low income. So it's a really interesting thing to think about. Now, I will couch that by saying low income in the village world means anything underneath median income for that neighborhood, because villages are not taking any public dollars, because they derive their fees from membership fees, grants, contributions, sponsorships, and donations. They're not under any requirements, as you find in some state, local, or federal programs that say a searchable map online. You can actually go to city and state and search to see if there's a village in that community, or if there's one in development. So this is my way of getting that done. So the village-to-village network, so let me just back up real quick to kind of take you down a little road. NCB Capital Impact is who I technically work for. We're a national nonprofit community development financial institution. We also do lending and technical assistance in a wide array of community development activities. Through the Center for Long-Term Supports Innovations, our mission has always been to expand choice for individuals who needing long-term services and supports that have a wide array of choices to meet their preference and to be able to access the services at what they want. And so that's a lot of the work that we've done. And so when we read about the village model, Beacon Hill Village, the article in 2006 in New York Times, I think everybody read it. We read it too, and so this is really great, and this meets our mission. And we contacted Beacon Hill Village and said, you know, we'd like to help. How can we get involved? And they said, well, you know, we had 3,000 calls to our village model, or to our village office of 3 staff members in the first day that the article went out. And we know we have something that can be replicated, but we're not in a position. We did not set up to be a national organization. Beacon Hill said we want to start our mission, but how can we do this? So we connected with them and say, you know, because we have taken replicable models to scale. We value community-owned models. We do not go in with a prescription and say you have to do this, but we try to enable communities to establish these organizations. And so in 2009, we developed the Village-to-Village Network, which is a joint partnership between between NCB Capital Impact and Beacon Hill Village. Getting that out of the way. So the network launched in 2010, January 29th, 2010. We created an online peer-to-peer network, and essentially what we are to do is really create a space for villages and communities who want to learn about villages to come together, to learn from each other, to expand their knowledge, and also share amongst each other. I think what's interesting is that, you know, we're finding is that we're sharing society anymore. I mean, new zip cars, you know, sharing the home swapping. You know, we share things this time, and so this is really kind of embedded in our culture, which is, you know, let each other learn from each other. And so our current membership is 178 organizations. That actually equates to about 675 individuals, because each membership is an organization. We allow individuals to sign up to 10 people onto their membership. So you have a founding board, you all want to get access to the services of the network, you sign up as an organization or as a group, and we're a village of villages, essentially, is what we are. Now, we are membership-based. It's $350 a year to be a member of the Village-to-Village Network. But what that gets you is the next slide. Drum roll. Promotion of the village model, we go out and do this type of work, but we also assist new, emerging, and established villages. So we have a documents library where villages will upload pretty much anything that they've created. We have 501c3 applications, we have articles of incorporation, we have bylaws, we have membership applications, we have surveys, we have anything that's been created by a village that wanted to be shared on the network is uploaded to there. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can just download the things that you need and make it work for yourself. We also do webinars. We have on average 4 webinars a month. 2 are open to the public, 2 are member only. One of the member-onlys is a Open Village Voices, which we allow just a space for people to, that burning question of the week. I'm dealing with this week, how do I deal with it? How can I address that? And an opportunity to talk through that with other peers in the network. We also are looking at research and evaluation, because the village model is a concept, but it's not evidence-based. And so we're working with researchers at UC Berkeley, Rutgers University, University of Michigan, BC, we don't turn anybody down, to really look at research and evaluate the impact. What does it mean to be a member of the village? How does that change your life? Early research that we're finding on a local basis, there was a research and evaluation conducted of the village, the One Call Club in Knoxville, Tennessee, that did a longitudinal study of their members over 4 years and said, basically, what does it mean to you to be a member of the village, and what does that do for you? And what they found was that it had an 80% decrease in hospitalizations and readmissions, an increase in health and wellness, so decrease in doctor's visits. And so the impact of the village model is big. And so what we're trying to do as the network is also gather that research to make the case for the movement as a whole. So, how do you apply this to your community? I'm a huge proponent of the asset-based community development. I come from that school, I guess, which basically says that we can sit around as a community and talk about all the things that are wrong, which is not a bad thing. But we also need to, at the same time, give just as much credence to what you do have. What are their assets in the community? Resources that are already there. And not necessarily resources in money, but resources in businesses willing to be a part of that community, community members who are willing to give up their time, faith-based communities that have services, existing aging network members that have services to offer. Where are their services? What are those assets? And how do you harness all of those things to then create that asset for your community? And so we look at, so that's really what the village model at its core principle is really about: taking the current assets within a community, elevating them to a level that everyone has equal access to them, and then providing that opportunity to also create the social glue that brings all of those pieces together. Local businesses will be your best friend if you bring business to them. They want to support the community because their business is in your community. So how do you get them to be a partner? Many villages will, do a preferred provider list, and they will talk to, drive people to that local business, that buy local. And so now you've got communities that are working together as a whole. There's a responsibility and accountability for every community member to be a part of that community. And so really figuring out what responsibility you want to take and how you want to be accountable to each other. Empowering everyone, that everyone has value. It drives me a little bit nuts that we tend to put our nursing homes or assisted living facilities away from the center. And so the message that we're sending is basically, you go sit over there, we're fine without you, thanks a lot for your time. And so you're devaluing a large proportion of your population as so many rich assets and expertise to give. And so empowering each other and looking at what those are, and also being able to learn new things. I'm a daughter of a woman who worked for my mother worked for the Red Cross for all of her life, and she's volunteered and saved many a person. And so to have her retire at the end of the year, last year, and say, well, what do you want to do? And she said, oh, well, I've already got it set up. I got my Encore career. I got this job over here part-time. I'm volunteering over here, and I'm doing this. But it's all things that she didn't get to do in her regular job. She gets to learn new things. And so she's empowered to be able to get out there and do that because that's what she can give back. The engagement is continued value. The social glue. That, that's it. I mean, that's the thing. How do we look out for each other? How do we take a society right now that's downtrodden, the economy's not growing, the government's kind of in turmoil because they can't come to agreement on anything? We have to look to each other to figure this out, and this is what the village model or any other model that you want to implement that works for you, that's the piece that works. So I'll take the next slide. This is my final slide. I mean, the model really provides an opportunity as a good guide for change, but again, if parts of it work for you and don't work for you, again, take it to your community, make it your own. Identify the culture and the needs within your community that want to make this work, that want to empower each other and figure out how to make that work for each other. And then really remember that there are no throwaway people in our communities, that everybody has value, everyone has something to offer, everyone can do that, and talents, and it's just really about harnessing those and encouraging those that make the village model strong, as well as any kind of community development. So that's my spiel. I'll be quiet now. So thank you.